Hey, good afternoon, you guys. Gonna jump on here. Let's talk some real estate. Let's talk creative financing. Hope you guys have had a great Monday. And we're gonna go ahead. Let's jump in and talk through real estate here. I want to talk through specifically obviously I want to answer any questions you guys got, so you can put them in the chat, things like that. If there's any deals you're working on. But I want to kind of talk through some things where it's, a lot of people ask me, why, or I guess, I've had a lot of conversation around people in real estate. Why are they not reaching their goals? I want to talk through a few of those, right? So many people are excited, I call them bright-eyed and bushy-tailed at the thought of investing in real estate. I mean, so many people. So some of you know I started the North Shore Real Estate Investors Association, so a RIA in my backyard years ago, and I've had thousands of people come through those doors, okay? Over the years, a lot of familiar faces, a lot of new faces at the monthly meetings. I've attended plenty of conferences over the last decade, met a ton of people. Now, as I continue to put out content, met a ton of people through it. A lot of people are interested in real estate. So why do some people get results and others don't? I'm curious y'all's thoughts on that, right? What are your thoughts? Why do some people, not only do they start buying properties, but they get traction, and it's like, rolling. What do you think are some things that hinders people, right? Because again, it is not uncommon for people to want to invest in real estate, in the sense that there's a lot of folks who want to do it. And it's not rocket science, right? So it's not rocket science to invest in real estate. So why do you think folks don't get the traction or get the results that they want? So I've got a few. So again, I ran for 6+ years. I had a monthly investor meeting. Sometimes it was 4 meetings a month. And so again, I met tons and tons of people through that. I've met people over the years through workshops and conferences, again, who are like, hey, I want to do this. I'm going to do this. This is my, New Year's resolution. I'm going to own real estate. And then so many people fizzle out. I remember when I got, specifically, I'd already bought some deals, and I was about to start ramping up my direct to seller marketing. 2016, maybe. So I was about to start doing a lot of direct to seller stuff. And I remember there was a guy, a couple, and I want to say one other person. So there was like 5 of us total who we'd meet often, and we met a few times and talked, and we're like, hey, what are you guys doing? I remember we had a group message, and I am the only one. It didn't take long, but just a year or two later, I'm the only one still doing this. So there's a lot of people who say, hey, I want to get into real estate. Hey, I want to invest in real estate, but then they fizzle out. Why is that? Let's see, Mr. Francis Martin. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's hard. Yeah. It's not, for people to say it's easy, it's not easy. It is difficult, but it's not rocket science. So I think that's important, is anyone can do it, in the sense of, again, it's not rocket science. There are ways to overcome a lot of the obstacles. Like, for example, I don't have money, things like that. That can be overcome. So why do people not see the results? Here are a few thoughts. So one of them is, I talked about this before, but it's clarity. Okay. If you are, think about if you're looking, you get in your car. Okay. So I live in New Orleans. if I got in my car and I said, hey, I want to drive to California, right? So presumably I would get in my car and I would need to go probably north, because, right, we're down in the south, probably north, and then probably west, right? I need to get, on the interstate. Well, have you ever been in a car and you're like, I'm hungry, but I've gotten to the point where I'm like, I don't even know what I want. And so you're just kind of like driving around aimlessly. I see a lot of people who do that, right? Because they're like, well, I don't know where I want to go. So they don't know they want to go to California, right? And let's be honest, California is a very big state. So when people say they want to invest in real estate, it's like saying, hey, I want to go to California. Well, I can't really type that into my GPS, right? Like I can't get turn-by-turn directions from New Orleans to California. I need to put in an address, right? I need to get very specific with where I'm trying to go, because otherwise, yeah, I can start heading in that general direction, but will I arrive there? Well, I don't know. I don't know where I'm trying to arrive, right? So I think the first issue is clarity. So then what do I see people do? A lot of people are like, oh, I just want to build wealth. Oh, I just want, I want to get rich. I want to do all this. I want, I'm chasing the bag. And so then they are, 1 week they're working with a, e-commerce store. And I meet them a few months later, they have a trucking company. And then I meet them, 6 months later again. And now they're into wholesaling. And 6 months later after that, they're thinking about doing rental arbitrage with Airbnbs, right? That's like saying, let me get in the car and I am, hey, I'm going to go to San Francisco. So, hey, boom. Wait, no, I want to go to New York City. Boom. And hey, I want to go to Chicago. Wait, no, I want to go back down to Dallas, right? So again, it's like you're not getting anywhere because you're not staying on the same path, okay? So the consistency on the same path, that right there is probably one of the top things that I see lacking with people trying to get results from real estate, right? They maybe go in that right direction a little bit, but maybe it's not long enough. One of the best pieces of advice I got was, I had been grinding for a few years, and yes, I was getting results, but I was like, man, this is a grind. And I remember my mentor, Leon, said, give your efforts time to compound. Meaning, Leon Johnson, he said, so guys, think about that. Like if it's a snowball, well, when it's really little, you can't see the snowman. But if you start with a little snowball and you start rolling it all together, right, you can eventually build, the snowman. But you've got to start. You've got to have something. Most people, they look at the little snowball and they can't see that with work, doing things in the right direction, right, the consistency, you can eventually build the snowman. So that's with, investing, right? Hey, if you're looking to buy a property, maybe it looks like making offers. And you know what? Maybe you're like, hey, I'm tired of getting rejected. Look, Pete Fortunato, who I consider the most prolific deal maker, made 200 offers. Not before one was accepted, but before one closed. When he was just out of high school. Back in the 60s, 200 offers. And look, again, not when one was accepted, but when one closed. So sometimes it might be, hey, let me just go back to the grind, keep making offers. Hey, I got one accepted, but wait, it didn't close because this came up or this happened or this thing came up. Okay, let me go back to the grind and keep working. Hey, I got this one a contract. Oh, it fell out because of a title issue. All right, let me go back to the grind, making offers, right? There's a level that you also have to learn that, again, you got to give your efforts time to compound. There's so much of what I'm currently seeing in my business, the results, the things that everyone wants to see. So the accepted offers, the purchased properties, various things like that comes from things that I did 3, 4, 5 years ago, right? And I'm just seeing the fruits of it today. So understand that there is a level, that you've got to keep showing up. Half of, I could give, what's the word? I could give credit, half of my success is just showing up consistently. Some people aren't seeing results because they forget to show up, or they don't give credit to the power of showing up, right? Because there's a level that, hey, look, the harder I work, the more that I consistently show up, the luckier I've gotten, right? And so some people like, man, Courtney, we started around the same time, but I took a break, but I came back and man, you're still at it. And look at all you've done. I'm like, yeah, it's because I didn't take the break. I didn't stop. I didn't leave it. I stayed with it. So I want to encourage some of you, if you're like, hey, I'm getting frustrated because I'm not seeing results. One, I would encourage you with clarity. Stay in the right direction. Stay in the same direction. Give effort in the right direction consistently. The second part of that is, staying in the game, right? It's a lot of times people want to quit, and a lot of times they want to quit too soon. The next thing, if you're frustrated and you're not seeing results, the next thing that I want to do is I want to suggest this. You can't course correct a parked car. What does that mean? If you're in the car and you're like, hey, I'm trying to go somewhere, well, you can't. It's hard to say, hey, am I heading in the right direction if you're just sitting there parked, right? And so some of the best things you got to do is you got to get started. Some people are addicted to learning information, and I get it. I love reading. I love going to conferences and learning, but there's a point that you're not going to learn certain things until you get your ass out there and start doing something. I can teach you things to say to sellers. I can teach you how to handle objections, but I can't teach you what's going to happen once you're standing in front of the seller. I can't teach you 100% of everything. You're just going to have to go get in front of sellers and start talking to them, right? And so one of the best things is, someone once said that a huge common trait for successful entrepreneurs is a level of what did they say it? The being comfortable with ambiguity, meaning I don't have it all figured out. But knowing that there's going to be a certain portion you're not going to have figured out, but you're going to take action. You know enough to go take action, right? And so I want to encourage you with that, right? So it's the idea that you get out there and you figure it out. People who get out there, they learn enough and they go take action. Now, let's just be honest. There's some people who don't go learn anything and they go out there, take action way too early. And they're like a bull in a china shop in the sense of, they're like, oh, I don't need to learn anything. I can just figure this all out, right? Like that's the person who's going to cut their hand off with a blade, right? You know what I mean? Like they're going to cause some issues, right? So you don't want to be like that, but you also don't be the person who's stuck, in park and they're never going anywhere because, well, what happens if no one told me what would happen if I take the car out of park and I put it in drive? Well, guess what? Have you learned how to put your foot on the brake? Have you learned that a car won't go forward unless, you have your foot off that brake and you put it in drive? Well, hey, then do that. So when it comes to real estate, when I was just getting started or when I tried a new strategy, I would often call my mentors and I use them as a sounding board for advice. I'd say, hey, this is something that I'm trying. This is something that I'm considering. And so that's those are some of my tips for you today is, if you're frustrated, and I made this post the other day, if you're not getting the results that you want, and if you're like, hey, I'm truly showing up, I'm putting in the work, I would encourage you, sit down, visualize what you're trying to accomplish, and say, what are some things that I've, not attempted yet? What action items have I not tried yet? Earlier today, I was having struggle with one of my deals, right? So what I do, I wrote down 12 different things and I'm currently working through, I've worked through about 5 of them today. So I have about 7 more. And tonight I know I'm going to send some emails. I'm going to send some texts. I'm going to do some follow-up because sometimes you have to just sit down and assess, what have I not tried? I promise you, sometimes, things don't go my way. Deals don't go as planned. all these things. But the reality is, it's not. I met with one of my friends, one of my private money lenders the other day, and he said, look, these deals, they're not going to, you're working really hard, and it's not going to be, no one's going to ever said you didn't work hard enough, right? And I get it, but I'm also trying to work smart here. And so sometimes people say, man, I'm trying and whatever's not working. Well, hey, can you go back to the drawing board and say, hey, what haven't I tried yet? Maybe you pull out some old course materials from a class you attended on the topic. What have I not tried yet? And so I just want to encourage you guys. Here I am 10 years later, and there's still moments like that where I have to reassess, hey, what can I do better? So those are my thoughts for y'all today. Look, I want to see you get results in whatever you're attempting to do. Maybe you're trying to build a wholesaling business. Maybe you're building out a rental portfolio. Maybe you're just getting into flipping properties. Maybe you've got some Airbnbs, whatever that looks like. I'm cheering you on. And so if you guys got questions, now's the time. You can put them in the chat. If you got a question about, anything with real estate, if you've got questions about something that you're working on, whether it's a deal you're working on, whether it's creative financing, anything like that. If you've got questions, you can type them in, or you can come join me on the live. I'm happy to talk with you here, live. I know the other day I just randomly thought, I said, hey, let me go live on Instagram for the next 10 days. And, it's been interesting to jump on here with you guys. Some of you guys have been on these lives just about every day, and I appreciate that. But I really wanted to do this. I wanted to do this in a way where, obviously, if I post content or something like that, you guys interact. But I wanted a way to kind of have conversations with you guys. And so this is a new medium for me, but what are you guys working on right now? Who here made an offer today? Put something in the comment if you made an offer on a property today, or if you talked with the seller, or if you did something, you worked on one of your properties. I spent half of my day in one of my title companies, one of their offices, making phone calls in between appointments. I sat in, they graciously allowed me to sit in one of their conference rooms when it's available. And I just had all my stuff spread out on the table, and I was making phone calls. I'm going out of the country this Saturday, and for about 2.5 weeks. And so what was I doing? I was calling my property manager saying, hey, look, what are some of the outstanding items? Hey, how's this property doing? What's the status on this, repair? Hey, I'm bringing you on to rent out this property. What do you need signed? What do you need from me? All of that. I still have a handful of my property managers I need to talk with this week in preparation of going out of the country. And so I'm like, hey, I'm going to be gone for 2.5 weeks. I'm going to have limited availability. You can't just pick up the phone and call me. I'm not going to have cell service over there. So what do we need to tackle? And so just handling stuff like that. So I see we've got a handful of folks joining with us now. Did any of you guys do anything today real estate related? I want to hear about it. Put it in the comments. I know, there we go. I'm seeing the comments down here. All right. All right. So I'm seeing the chats down here. All right. Let's see. Mr. Francis Martin, I got a deal. Look, I want to hear about it. Jay said, hi, I'm starting out here in SoCal. What would you do if you have to start over for 90 days? Ms. Francis, I'm going to pull you on next, okay? Jay, if I had to start over in 90 days, I would get really clear on what I'm trying to accomplish. Because again, that would really, I think not enough people talk about clarity, because clarity, there needs to be a general sense of clarity. Because at the end of the day, you've got to, I don't mean clarity in the sense of you have it all figured out. I'm saying clarity in the sense of you know what you're aiming to get. Are you looking to get, one of the biggest ways I say is, how do you need real estate to serve you? Do you need it to be today money? Do you need it to be tomorrow money? So today money is, you need it to pay your bills, right? You want it to, replace your job, or hey, you don't have income coming in from jobs, so you need it to be that. Or you're like, hey, I want this to be my retirement. Hey, I've got my bills today taken care of. I need real estate to take care of me when I can no longer work, meaning I need it to be my retirement. And then some people say, I want it to be both. I get that, but it's really hard to serve two masters. You have to decide, which one do you need more of, which one's the priority? Do you need more active income, meaning money, like which one do you need more? Because again, you've got to prioritize. Because look, if it's like, hey, I need money today, I need money to cover my bills today, I need this to replace my job, whatever, I'm going to say, hey, you either need to flip, wholesale, get your real estate license, or go work in the real estate industry some way, and basically learn real estate but get a job, like a job within the industry. I think too many people underestimate that. And so if that's what I do, I'd probably get back to wholesaling. I'd probably go out and wholesale, but if my goal was to have tomorrow money, I would go work in the industry. So I would have something taking care of my bills today, and then I would house hack. I would start with that. So I'd get a job so I can qualify for a loan and my bills are taken care of. So I'm not having to do deals to basically handle the day to day. But I would house hack, and I would start buying rentals. Whether it's with, creative financing, I would learn how to raise private money, and I would get out there and find, problems to solve. And again, if I'm juggling a full-time job and saying, hey, I want to, I want to have rentals. Well, maybe it's just, you've got to define how many you want, right? And so your level of being aggressive is going to be relative to your goals. If you're like, hey, I just want 5 rentals. Well, 1 rental a year could be more than enough to get you to that 5 in just a short amount of time. If you're like, hey, I want 50, okay, well then maybe you want to buy more than 1 a year, right? And so that's something that's important. What would I do if I had to start over in 90 days? Man, I would get very clear on how I needed real estate to serve me, and then I would go into that direction. Good question. All right, Mark. All right. Hey, how's it going?
Hey, Courtney, how you doing?
I'm doing well, man. What you got
Good.
going on?
So I got a deal that I'm working on, and I need your opinion on
Okay.
this. Um, so I'm a person, when I buy a property subject to, I feel like I'm the person who's responsible for now that mortgage, that person's credit, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm working on the deal. I have this seller who is a little bit finicky. He's moving out the country, really great interest rate, 3.36, 20,000 entry fee, house fair market value about 345, monthly payments like 1900 a month. It's in Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the only thing is that I don't trust the seller as much as I would like to. A lot of my sellers that I work with, I feel like, we build a really great report with each other. It's no concerns as far as me utilizing, doing subject to with their properties. Um, But I had someone who contacted me on the interest of purchasing it from me at like an assignment or whatnot. And I'm not a person who likes to sell deals like assignment or whatnot unless it's wholesaling. So I'm just having a little bit of like, how should I proceed with this seller? Should I just say, hey, I can't do it for you anymore, kind of just, kill the deal, or should I assign it to the other buyer?
So, fair question. So we can always talk about your hesitations with the seller and how I would approach that.
Mm-hmm.
But look, I'm not a fan of assigning
Me neither.
uh,
Yeah.
creative deals because here's the thing: it's entering risk into your business for the life of that deal.
Correct.
It's and then if you're already saying, hey, this guy's giving you some potential red flags or something like that,
Yeah.
then that's saying, hey, what's the likelihood of success for your buyer? Because the risk
Correct.
comes from both the seller and the buyer. For
Correct.
example, what if something happens and then things don't go according to plan and the buyer says, hey, I bought this deal from you, da da da,
Mm-hmm.
and then they say, hey, I want to sue you because I lost a lot of money on this deal because da da da, whatever.
Correct. Correct.
Um,
So you're thinking maybe just ethically it's just best to possibly just walk away and at full throttle.
well, tell me this. So why are you hesitant with the seller? So they're what, moving out of the country?
He's moving out the country. Me and him been going back and forth. We have a realtor involved. This realtor, she's kind of been referring me a lot of subject to deals and stuff like that, deals that she has going on. So building a really great rapport with her, and I want to kind of keep pace with her as far as the relationship. Um, so the thing is that now with this seller involved, she knows him well enough to kind of say, hey, Martin, the inclination that you're having about him is right. He can be kind of back and forth, kind of money hungry kind of guy. So he promised her X amount of dollars on one side because I was just going to pay her an assignment fee and, kind of move on with it. But he promised her something else and just got all kind of kind of messy for me. So just my gut feeling is telling me kind of like, leave this guy alone because I don't think he would do anything intentional to kind of hurt, but I think that he probably would do something unintentional just to potentially, contact the lender and say, hey, I'm not responsible for this loan anymore, and just want to have that something, give him peace of mind as he's leaving the country, which possibly can cause implications as far as the due on sale clause and whatnot. So
So
go ahead.
I've had two situations where I was most concerned with the sellers.
Okay.
Um, the the first one was one that we ultimately the deal fell apart.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, and I do a lot of my deals with agents. This agent called me. She was like, "Hey, Courtney, I just walked a client through a property.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to buy it, but hey, basically, it made me think of you. Do you want to make an offer?" And what it ended up being was they were facing
Mm-hmm.
foreclosure, and um, but they were just the sellers were so motivated they were willing to figure it out. So that I literally got on the phone with, both of the agents,
Mm-hmm.
the one who brought me the deal and then the listing. And I said, if they're open to me taking it over subject to,
Mm-hmm.
then hey, the sellers had already left the country.
Correct.
Apparently there was some medical issue
Mm-hmm.
and like they just, you know, they left the country. I was like, okay, that's
Mm-hmm.
one thing that's like, okay, you have to overcome that.
Correct.
And then the second part was they were so far behind. Their monthly payment was like 1,200, and they were 20,000 behind, something like that.
Same here. Yeah.
So yeah, so they hadn't paid in a while. So
Correct.
they were actually locked out of their online portal with Chase. So
Mm.
they actually couldn't log in to figure out. And when they left the country, they left all of their paperwork. And so I'm like, okay. They're like, well, we think our payment used to be around 1,200. Okay. So I'm
Yeah.
like sitting here. In order for me to do proper due diligence, I need to see like the most recent statement.
Correct.
But hey, I was like, you know what? Let's lock this up because like, let me see what if I can remember. Like there was a decent potential for equity and there was a potential
Mm-hmm.
for cash flow, but until I could figure it out, until I could confirm it, I didn't
Correct.
know.
Correct.
So I said this. I did a purchase agreement and I said, hey, this is contingent on me getting a reinstatement
Mm-hmm.
from the lender, a reinstatement amount as well as a payoff amount.
Correct.
Um, And there was some other things that, there's some liens I had to go negotiate.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, this deal will only go forth if, XYZ happens.
Yeah.
When things are unclear, things can get messy. So I was like, I want to be as clear as possible. And so that was one where, because of the uncertainty, the
Mm-hmm.
deal was riskier. The only reason I was willing to entertain it was, number one, I knew how to find clarity.
Mm-hmm.
And then number two, this deal basically, it couldn't be a cash deal, but it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't too crazy far off from a cash deal. Basically, there
Yeah.
was potential for equity and, potential for cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
And so if there wasn't meat on the bone, I would not put my neck out there.
Yeah.
Right. Plus, it was a great house in a great neighborhood.
Yeah. This
Um,
house is too. It's a great house, great neighborhood. 15 minutes away from the hospital.
yeah.
That's going to be doing enrollment for traveling nurses. Great MTR potentially, or long-term rental property. HOA, neighborhood pool, playground, everything, all the works.
So when in doubt,
Mm-hmm.
but here's the hard part: they are behind, right?
They're behind, but I was able to help them through a modification. So I don't mind sitting down on the phone with the seller and the lender, and as long as they give me authorization, speaking on their behalf and speaking to the lender. Because sometimes, when people get behind like that, he was behind 40,000, and they modified the entire loan.
So it's really important to make sure that modification
Trial
did not
period.
include language. Wait, what?
Trial period. Yeah, trial period. First payment begins October 1st.
Well, no, it's really important to understand that that modification did not have a clause that said they have to live in the house.
No, it did not. It did not. Mm-mm.
So that's really important, because a big thing is sometimes those modifications have basically guarantees and
Mm-hmm.
some assurances.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there's a trial period where you have to make payments and something like that.
Correct.
Um, and then the other thing there is, um, so that's an example of, if certain things seem uncertain, I go
Yeah.
towards control. Meaning, I'm going to be like, hey, I will only do it if I can get this paperwork, if I can do the proper due diligence, right?
Yeah.
And again, I'm only going to do that on a deal that has meat on the bone. Not, hey, it's going to appreciate, hey, I might be able to get a heightened cash flow, but like, hey, as the deal sits today, the higher, if there's a risk towards it,
Mm-hmm.
more than a normal subject to risk, I want there to be,
A lot of
if
meat
I'm
on
going to have
the
to,
bones.
yeah, if I'm going to put my neck out there,
Correct.
right? I want it to be something that I'm like, hey, it's for a certain reason.
Correct.
The second transaction I had was one, so that one I ended up walking away when the numbers came back, it was a lot higher than they thought, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, you know what? I was willing to put the effort to find out.
Correct.
Obviously, we went and it wasn't what they thought. So, hey, and the house did get foreclosed on. But I said,
Mm-hmm.
look, I was at least going to try.
Correct.
The second situation was a seller I didn't trust.
Mm-hmm.
So, an investor sent me this, hey, look, Courtney, I tried and I tried, but can you just see if you can help them? Guy is, um, it was a divorce situation facing foreclosure,
Mm-hmm.
and the ex-wife was sabotaging the transaction. Like, literally, house was vacant and she was bringing cats with fleas to live, to stay in
Oh
it.
wow. Yeah.
Like literally, when she was living there, wouldn't let anyone walk in the property, all that.
Mm-hmm.
Her name was not on the loan,
Mm-hmm.
and but her name was still on the deed.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, because she was like a stay-at-home mom, she couldn't qualify for the loan
Yeah.
type of thing.
Yeah.
But so here's the thing: was he was like, "Hey, I'm getting foreclosed on, and I
Mm-hmm.
need help, but
Mm-hmm.
obviously she's interfering." The only way I could make it work was a subject to.
Mm-hmm.
He was all on board. Whatever you have to do.
Correct.
But my fear was, what would she do? Right? Like, would she trigger the due on sale? Anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So we built in paperwork specifically that, and I had both him and her sign, but I slowed down when we were at the closing with her, and we talked about this prior, that if she interfered with the transaction, you have to understand that, if you interfere with this transaction, that you could face a lawsuit for damages, right? For
Will that stand up
interfering.
in court though? You think that will
So,
stand up in court?
so that's a great question. I haven't personally enforced it. And
Exactly.
so, but if someone has enforced
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
I would very much love to see the case study. That's a great
yeah, yeah,
question.
yeah.
Anytime someone says something, but here's the thing, a lot of times, so her biggest issue was she was pissed at him, right?
Mm-hmm.
She was pissed at him.
Yeah.
So here's the other thing we did. They were finalizing the divorce when I met him.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember being in a Best Buy. I remember as clear as day. I was in a Best Buy when he called me.
Okay.
And he's like, Courtney, I don't know what to do. She, like I said, okay, when are you going to court? He was going to court like the end of the week. I said, okay,
Mm-hmm.
get with your divorce attorney
Mm-hmm.
because she was seeking child support and alimony for a period of time. And he's like, she is hurting my credit and
Yeah.
all of these things, but then she wants money from me, right?
Correct.
I said, okay, you need to bring this up in divorce and involve this in the custody situation. And
Mm.
they actually got it in writing, number one, that she had to comply within 48 hours with any paperwork related to the sale. Because previously she had like refused to sign,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that.
Correct.
And so not only did they quantify it, but so what I'm talking about here is I am never afraid to have a come to Jesus talk of like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
I have the tools to help you, but I'm not going to fight you to do so. Right.
Correct.
And then what I did was, even when people, like, there was a little questionable, I built paperwork
Mm-hmm.
to build in some protection. Great question around, can you enforce it? That is hard to say.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
sometimes that paperwork is enough to get people in line. And so this is why I
We will
believe.
see. I'm gonna kind of put some more um and see what I'm trying to like October and October or whatnot. So now I'm just trying to see if I want to move forward with the deal or do I want to just kind of kill it and let him figure it out. Again, like you said, maybe not having it assigned to another buyer is the best idea in case they get stuck with someone that I knew better that they shouldn't get stuck with.
Okay.
I
Your
just yeah
cell reception is a little bit choppy.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Just FYI.
Okay, sorry about
But
that.
no, it's okay. But I think I got the most most out of that. Here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so the loan modification happened, right?
Correct.
Please tell me it's their signature on the loan modification.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. I've been to his house. I sat down with him. I faxed the documents for him. I mean, like that's part of my subject to process. Especially if it's a pre foreclosure or someone who's in arrears, is that I'll sit down with you and kind of go through all your paperwork with you if we have to do a modification. I'm always modification first before I pay the arrears.
So that's actually so it's interesting you say that. I actually generally when there's a modification, I very much have red flags up. When there
Okay.
is a very recent modification, um, because there is a level there
Mm-hmm.
that so worst case scenario was I saw someone do a loan modification with a power like a limited power of attorney.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be very that goes into a level where I was so surprised that was even accepted. And
Mm-hmm.
so but know this when it comes down to it, ultimately
Mm-hmm.
I am going to go toward more level of control with the
Mm-hmm.
seller, and if I can control it with the paperwork, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then here, so the other day I talked about my 5 success factors for subject to deals, and one of them is strong communication before, at closing, and after the closing. And a huge part of that is I say, hey, in order for this to work, you've got to
Correct.
do this.
Correct.
I've got to do this.
Correct.
We need to have the hard conversation. Hey,
Yeah.
so you're going out of the country, and look, this loan, you need to be very clear. This loan is still in your name. Like don't be fooled. It's still in your name. Um, but look, I'm going to be making the payments on your behalf. And
Mm-hmm.
and so is you mentioned your concern is that they're going to alert the lender, trigger the due on sale. Is it because they don't want it to stay in their name?
No, I just feel like he's the type of individual that would just do something unintentional. Like I said, it's unintentional for him to do it, but I think it's just something that he would do just to kind of have a clear clear like conversation with the lender, like, hey, I'm no longer responsible for this loan. I just want to let you guys know that. And they will just be like, oh, okay. And then may ask questions. Just somebody who just kind of oblivious to like,
Is
the
this a bank that he uses for like a bank account or something?
no,
It's
no,
just
no.
it's
It's one of those.
just they just have a loan with him. Is
Correct,
there
correct.
any reason why he would speak to the loan to the lender after doing the deal together?
No reason. No reason at all.
So this is where I would have a conversation with him.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, generally speaking, so like for example, when I do a purchase agreement for a subject to, I have disclosures. And
Me
look, my
too.
purchase agreement is 2 pages. My disclosure is like 8 pages.
Correct. Me
And so
too.
we go through these situations, and one of them is, that they have no further control of the property, right?
Mm-hmm.
The loan's in their name, but they basically they're not coming here and deciding what to do with the property. But other things like that is talking about the the two relationships. So there's their relationship with the bank,
Mm-hmm.
so the lender, and then there's their relationship with me. I never officially make a relationship with the bank, meaning I don't assume the loan,
Correct.
but
Me neither.
I have paperwork that allows me to talk to them, right?
Yeah.
And so one of those disclosures is the due on sale clause.
Yeah.
Hey, basically, by we're not, it's like, hey, we're not doing anything wrong here, anything illegal,
Mm-hmm.
but at the end of the day, us transferring, could trigger the due on sale clause. So a lot of times I say, hey, generally speaking, one of the things we sign at the closing table is this mutual agreement to share the online login, like
Yeah.
the online portal, as long as it's not like Chase and they have a loan with Chase, but also bank accounts with Chase.
Correct.
We'll do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say, hey, look, you'll be able to go on there. That's one way you can check and make sure that these payments are being, that I'm making the payments on your behalf.
Correct.
But a big part of that is generally speaking, like, I'm going to update the communication for the lender,
Correct.
right? And things like that. And so like, hey, look, this loan is still in your name. You still have access to it, right? Like you absolutely have authority to still, like, if anything, to check and still make sure the payments being made, all that.
Mm-hmm.
But moving forward, there's generally should be no reason for them to communicate with the
Communicate with
lender.
the lender.
And so we're
Okay.
going to set those expectations. So like a lot of times, again, I say, hey, in order for this to work
Mm-hmm.
for you, you're going to want, in order for this to work for you, Mr. Seller, is that I'm going to make the payments. And
Correct.
so here are some things that I'm going to do and some assurances I can make, right? But in order for it to work for me, here are some things I need you to do. I
Yeah.
need you to recognize that there's this risk of the due on sale. And so I'm going to ask for you to not interfere with the transaction. And
Mm-hmm.
so, moving forward, I'm going to be communicating with the lender. You're going to have opportunities to, check and see if the payments are being made. I'm not saying you can't check those things, but I'm saying, hey, moving forward, I'm going to communicate with them, make sure those payments are being made, all of those things. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I'm going to need you to communicate with me.
Correct.
For example, if you're ready to, get another loan, I want you to give me a call whenever you're ready to buy another house. I'm going to
Yeah.
help you connect with the lender so we can deal with the fact that this loan is still in your name.
Yeah.
Hey, if you ever have financial issues again, especially if you're considering bankruptcy, in order for this to work, I need you to call me. The last time we talk is not going to be at this closing table.
Yeah.
So like there's this level of strong communication about what for them to expect. And I call it conversation leadership. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, hey, if at any point you cannot get on board with this,
Mm-hmm.
let's pump the brakes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You see what I'm
Yeah. This
saying?
is the only. Yeah, this is the only subject to property that doesn't have a lot of equity in it because most of the time I try to refinance or I'm going to refinance out the subject to, and next, just try to, move out of that loan or whatever. But this is the one that I know that I may have to sit with for some time, if anything.
Well, so here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you fear some of that, I mean, if he's going out the country, is he like moving indefinitely out of the
That's
country?
what he says.
Okay. So in situation like that, like yeah, I want the title, like because sometimes when I'm unsure, I might do more like a contract for deed, or in Louisiana we call it a bond for deed,
Mm-hmm.
or like a master lease
Contract for
option or
D.
something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I might do something like that if I'm a little unsure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, if they're talking about moving out of the country indefinitely, I'm gonna want to have that come to Jesus talk. And look,
Mm-hmm.
again, if they're hesitating, if it's like, hey, I think he's naive and he just may not know what he doesn't know, great, I'm gonna correct that.
Okay.
Like you see what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like
Yeah.
again, conversation leadership. The last thing I want is my clients, my best clients, and or my consistent client type of person is I don't want them to be uninformed. And
Correct.
so now I'm not going to word vomit on them, but I'm going to say, hey, look, we do need to sit down and talk through this.
Yeah.
And that's generally during the purchase agreement with those disclosures where we have those conversations. But then, if I ever feel something, come up, I'm gonna address it, right? Um, but yeah,
Okay.
does that
Cool.
help?
Yeah, that helps. That helps. I'm gonna probably reach out to him tomorrow, try to have a conversation with him, mull over the numbers a little bit more, and just to kind of see. I mean, midterm rental is not my thing. I'd rather have a long-term tenant in it. But like you said, it's not a lot of meat on the bones. If I turn it into a Section 8, the cash flow is thin. So the thing is that I'm just looking at it, like you said, in case of anything, but still have that conversation with him and see exactly what it leads to.
Well, and here's the thing. So if it's ever so I am a big fan of my subject to deals having equity and cash flow,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, me too.
The few situations where they don't are
Hmm.
because they are in a prime location and is a great product.
It's a great product. I'm more in love with the product, not in love with the. I'm not in love with the deal. I try not to fall in love with the deal, but I'm more in love with the product. The product is a really nice product.
But what I mean by that is location. Um, Sometimes it is hard to get the 50 cents on the dollar deal
Hmm.
in the best
Yeah,
location. Um,
yeah.
but so that has been, but because there's an elevated risk,
Hmm.
I'm willing to offset that risk with, um, basically, I'm saying, hey, if this goes south, if
Hmm.
it gets, okay, so like here's a number to run. If the property's worth, let's just say RV is 100, and if the due on sale clause got called, and I can't, I try everything with the lender,
Hmm.
but I can't reverse it.
Correct.
It's happening. Well, then then I'm like, okay, what can I go refinance it for?
Yeah.
Right? Most, lenders are going to do, 70 to
Hmm.
80%. So I've got, if it's worth 100, 70 to 80,000. Well,
Correct.
if you owe 100, right?
Hmm.
So then you're going to bring anywhere from 20 to 30,000. You're going to have to bring 20 to 30,000 to the
Yeah.
table. And then with today's rates, what's cash flow going to look like, right?
Yeah.
Um, a lot of people like, hey, that would kill every single one of my deals if I had that thought. Well, okay,
Hmm.
so I understand that, but then understand for the longest time, I only ever thought about financing as, you know, loans with interest rates.
Yeah.
But guess what? There are some loans you can do where there's an equity partner.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, someone bring could someone bring, um, you know, the cash and they own half of it, right?
Yeah.
Like, or something like that, right? Or
Yeah.
hey, can someone bring the 20 or 30,000 and we go refinance it? And hey, it's going to break even or cash flow negative for a few years, but this is a great area and we're willing, to split that negative.
Yeah.
Um, and most people can't do that, right?
Hmm.
A lot of people, they're like, hey, I can't do that. But at least I want people to know when they're entering a riskier deal, meaning
Hmm.
low to negative or no low to no to negative equity
Equity.
and low to no to negative cash flow, especially in a long-term rental.
Hmm.
Because at the end of the day, saying, okay, then what's bringing me into this deal,
Yeah.
right? Like let's take our investing cap, pit it back one, and say, hey, what is bringing me into this deal?
Hmm.
And then knowing that there's a point to walk away too at a certain point, right? Sometimes the best deal we do is the one we don't do. And
Correct.
so, but that becomes difficult knowing when to say that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But like again, don't be a motivated buyer,
Hmm.
right? If you know, at the end of the day too, knowing when to say, hey, all right, we've looked, you know, we've tried a few different things, but you know, here's where we're at.
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna mull over it a little bit more, try to figure it out. I do have a lender who's going to be an equity partner in this, so it makes it a lot easier. But again, it's just the fact that do I want to operate kind of on the fact that, like you said, no equity, low, no to low cash flow, and then next thing you know, it's in a really good school district, really good neighborhood. I mean, it's really like one of those neighborhoods you look for. So
Hmm.
just now it's just kind of figuring out, is it worth the risk with the seller. So I'm going to have a conversation when, like you said, have that come to Jesus moment with them, and kind of really try to figure out where his brain is, because I don't need to be, my biggest thing is that I don't like it when the seller gets money hungry, especially in subject twos. So
Hmm.
when he started to talk a little bit like, oh, I can pause on everything, that just makes me feel like red flag, red flag, red flag. It's like, okay, dude.
Yeah. So that is very
Yeah,
important, right? Like the you don't want, you know, seller's remorse. And
correct.
so if he's got a property that doesn't have equity,
Mm-hmm.
and if you're coming to the table maybe paying some cost to do the transaction,
Mm-hmm.
what more is he wanting out of it? Money on top?
It's always money on top, isn't it?
Yeah, but a lot of times I say, hey man, look, at the end of the day, again, don't be a motivated buyer.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm gonna try to see. I'll take your advice. I'm gonna talk to him more, and kind of pick his brain some more before I close it. And then I'll figure out what I want to do after that. But I appreciate it though.
Good stuff,
Appreciate
man.
all the
Appreciate you jumping
content.
on, man.
The content is amazing. Keep going.
I appreciate you, man. Thanks for jumping on and having a
All right.
conversation.
Have
You
a
too.
good one.
All right, guys. Well, um, I hope that was helpful for you guys to see, to listen to. Thanks for you guys joining in tonight. We're just about done here. You've been seeing my little dog hang out in the back. But we're talking about subject to deals. So appreciate you guys joining in. I'm gonna go live again tomorrow. But you guys have a great rest of your evening.